We are conditioned from our earliest memories to believe that persistence is an unassailable virtue, a testament to character and determination. From childhood fables praising the steadfast to modern narratives celebrating the relentless pursuit of goals, the message is clear: never give up. This deep-seated societal programming subtly casts giving up not as a strategic pivot or a necessary release, but as an indictment of weakness, a mark of failure. What if, however, this very ingrained belief is precisely what keeps us entangled in situations that no longer serve our highest good? Consider the profound cost of adhering to this singular narrative. We often find ourselves clinging to relationships that have withered, careers that stifle our spirit, or aspirations that ceased to resonate years ago, all under the guise of commitment. The sheer investment of our time, emotional energy, and resources creates an invisible yet immensely heavy anchor. To abandon a path, even one devoid of joy or growth, can feel like throwing away not just the present, but every moment we poured into it, leaving us paralyzed by the prospect of perceived loss and the daunting question of what next. This deep psychological resistance to letting go often traps us in a silent struggle where the fear of the unknown outweighs the tangible discomfort of the familiar. It's a paradox. The very persistence celebrated by society can become our greatest burden, holding us captive in a cycle of diminishing returns and quiet dissatisfaction. The true strength, then, may not lie in stubbornly holding on, but in the courageous act of intentional release, of understanding when to pivot and how to gracefully step away. Do you often feel a persistent, quiet ache in your chest? A subtle undercurrent of dissatisfaction even amidst apparent success? Perhaps you recognize the weight of obligations you once enthusiastically embraced, now feeling like chains binding you to a life that doesn't quite fit. You might wake up with a lingering sense of dread, wondering if this is truly all there is, caught between the expectations of others and the faint yearning whispers of your own soul. This profound internal conflict, the desire for lightness against the fear of relinquishing what you hold, is a universal human experience, yet it often feels isolating. You might be grappling with a career that offers security but drains your passion, or a relationship that provides comfort but lacks true connection. The effort to maintain appearances, to keep up the facade of unwavering dedication, can be utterly exhausting, leaving you with little energy for what genuinely brings you joy. This pervasive feeling of being stuck, of having invested too much to simply walk away, fuels a cycle of emotional exhaustion and stifled potential. You yearn for freedom, for clarity, for a life that feels authentic and expansive, yet the mental and emotional hurdles to achieve it seem insurmountable. This internal tug of war, where the known discomfort provides a strange sense of safety against the terrifying freedom of the unknown, is a powerful psychological bind. It's the constant questioning: am I strong enough to let go? Will I regret it? What if I'm making a mistake? The longing for a lighter heart and mind is palpable, yet the courage to initiate that change feels just out of reach, overshadowed by guilt, fear, and the sheer effort it seems to demand. This struggle is real, and it's a sign not of weakness, but of a soul yearning for alignment. Imagine the profound liberation of waking each morning with a sense of genuine purpose, your mind unburdened by past regrets or future anxieties. Picture a life where decisions are made not out of obligation or fear, but from a place of deep self-awareness and authentic desire. This is not some abstract, unattainable ideal, but a tangible reality awaiting you when you master the art of intentional release. Instead of merely coping with circumstances, you will actively sculpt a life that reflects your deepest values, creating ample space for new opportunities and authentic connections to flourish. This book is your invitation to step into that lighter existence, to move from the heavy shackles of obligation and stagnant commitments to the exhilarating freedom of true self-alignment. The transformation awaiting you extends far beyond simply quitting an undesirable situation. It's about cultivating a profound inner peace, reclaiming your personal power, and discovering an unparalleled clarity of mind. You will learn to disentangle your identity from external achievements or relationships, fostering a resilient sense of self that remains whole and vibrant, independent of any outcome or attachment. Consider a future where you approach life's inevitable changes with grace and confidence, no longer paralyzed by the prospect of letting go. You will navigate transitions with newfound strength, understanding that ending one chapter gracefully is the most powerful way to begin another with fresh energy and genuine enthusiasm. This profound shift will manifest in clearer communication, healthier relationships, and a renewed sense of purpose, empowering you to live more fully in the present and embrace the boundless potential of your future. It is about creating a life that feels not just bearable, but truly joyful and expansive. The journey to such profound psychological freedom might seem daunting, yet it's a path I have dedicated years to understanding, not merely as a theoretical concept, but as a lived human experience. My own path, initially rooted in the structured problem-solving of engineering, equipped me with a unique lens for deconstructing complex systems, a methodology I later applied to the intricate workings of the human psyche. This analytical precision, combined with insights gathered from extensive travel and observing diverse cultures grappling with change, led me to a deep appreciation for the universal struggle to release what no longer serves us. I discovered that while the external manifestations of holding on might vary, the internal psychological mechanisms are remarkably consistent. From the bustling streets of European capitals to tranquil rural landscapes, I witnessed firsthand the quiet suffering caused by an inability to let go and the immense relief that followed intentional release. This fueled a mission to demystify this powerful process, to distill the complex psychology of letting go into accessible, actionable steps. My approach merges an engineer's quest for clarity and practicality with an empathetic understanding of human emotional resilience, offering a compassionate yet analytical guide. Within these pages, you will discover the deep-seated psychological reasons that make letting go feel almost impossible, helping you to understand the paradox of persistence and the powerful grip of emotional attachments on your identity. You'll gain crucial insight into the initial excitement that often blinds us to potential challenges, understanding how the brain's reward system can create an addictive cycle of beginning new ventures. The book illuminates the diverse sources of drive, exploring why motivation fluctuates and how external factors like promotions and social comparison can subtly entrench us in paths that no longer align with our true selves. You'll uncover practical strategies for identifying when something has genuinely reached its expiration date, moving beyond denial to honest self-assessment. This involves learning to recognize patterns of dissatisfaction and misalignment rather than rationalizing them away. We will explore how to gracefully navigate the pressures of success and the pervasive comparison trap, which often distorts our perception of progress and fulfillment. Ultimately, this book offers a step-by-step roadmap to assess your current commitments, release what weighs you down, and consciously create the space necessary for authentic growth and genuine contentment. This comprehensive guide is designed to empower you with the tools and understanding to make informed, courageous decisions about your life's direction. You will learn not just what to let go of, but how to do so with grace, wisdom, and a profound sense of self-compassion. The process involves identifying where you've invested time, energy, and emotion, and then carefully, methodically, reevaluating those investments against your evolving values and desires. You'll gain a unique perspective on the intricate dance between holding on and releasing, enabling you to choose consciously rather than react impulsively. This is not a harsh mandate to discard your past or abandon your dreams without thoughtful consideration. Instead, it is an encouraging invitation to embark on a journey of introspection and intentional liberation, supported by a framework built on both analytical rigor and heartfelt understanding. Prepare to shed the unnecessary burdens you've carried for too long, to cultivate a lighter heart and a clearer mind, and to step into a future brimming with possibility. The profound joy of living with less emotional baggage awaits. Why is it so hard to give up? The paradox of persistence. A woman sits in her car in the company parking lot, hands gripping the steering wheel, 30 minutes before her shift starts. She's done this for 3 years, arriving early not out of enthusiasm but because crossing the threshold requires that much preparation. Her friends tell her she's lucky to have such stability. Her parents remind her of the pension. She knows logically that she should feel grateful. Yet every Sunday evening her chest tightens with a dread so familiar it has become part of her routine, like brushing her teeth or setting an alarm. This is the paradox we rarely name. We know what drains us, what diminishes us, what keeps us awake at 3 in the morning staring at the ceiling. We can articulate it perfectly over coffee with a trusted friend. But knowing and leaving are separated by an invisible wall built from 1,000 small justifications, each one reasonable on its own, collectively forming an impenetrable barrier. It sounds simple. Give up and start something new. But it is almost never like that. From the moment we learn language, we absorb stories that glorify persistence. The tortoise defeats the hare through stubborn consistency. Edison fails 10,000 times before the light bulb works. Every sports movie culminates with the underdog who refused to quit. These narratives embed themselves so deeply that quitting becomes synonymous with failing, 2 words we use almost interchangeably in casual conversation. When someone says they gave up, we instinctively prepare to console them as if they've suffered a loss rather than made a choice. This cultural programming serves a purpose, certainly. Societies function when people fulfill commitments, complete difficult tasks, push through temporary discomfort. A surgeon who quits mid-operation or a parent who abandons a crying infant at 2 in the morning would rightly face condemnation. The problem emerges when we apply this same moral framework to every domain of life without distinction, treating a soul-crushing career with the same permanence we'd apply to raising a child. The resistance runs deeper than mere social judgment. Our brains evolved to minimize loss more intensely than they pursue gain, a phenomenon psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky termed loss aversion. Walking away from a job you've held for 5 years feels like discarding those 5 years entirely, as if they retroactively lose meaning the moment you submit your resignation. The relationship that consumed your 20s, even if it's been stagnant for the last 3 years, represents an investment. Your mind calculates in sleepless nights, compromises made, dreams adjusted. To leave feels like declaring all of that worthless. We also confuse our commitments with our identity in ways that make separation feel like self-destruction. You're not just someone who practices law, you are a lawyer. The years of education, the student debt, the family pride at your graduation, the business cards in your wallet, these become woven into your sense of self. Abandoning the path means confronting the terrifying question, who am I without this? That void feels more threatening than the concrete misery of Sunday evening dread. Then there's the sunk cost fallacy, playing out in real time across millions of lives. You've already invested so much time, money, emotional energy, reputation, that leaving now would waste all of it. This logic sounds reasonable until you recognize its fatal flaw. Those costs are already spent regardless of what you do next. Staying doesn't recover them, it simply piles new costs onto the existing heap. Yet our minds struggle with this reality. We double down, convincing ourselves that just a bit more effort, one more year, one more attempt at fixing what's fundamentally misaligned will somehow justify the original investment. Fear amplifies everything. The familiar, even when painful, offers predictability. You know what Monday morning feels like, how to navigate the political dynamics at work, which coping mechanisms get you through the week. Leaving means stepping into genuine uncertainty. What if the next job is worse? What if you discover you're not actually good at the thing you've been dreaming about? What if financial security evaporates and you end up regretting everything? These fears aren't irrational. Real consequences exist. Mortgages come due. Health insurance matters. Professional reputations take years to build and moments to damage. The people around us, parents, partners, colleagues, have built their own expectations and plans around our current trajectory. Disrupting that affects more than just ourselves, adding layers of guilt and obligation to an already complex decision. So we stay, we rationalize. We tell ourselves it's not that bad, or it'll get better, or we're being unrealistic, or everyone feels this way sometimes. We compare our internal experience to others' external presentations and conclude we're simply not grateful enough, not resilient enough, not committed enough. We pathologize our own dissatisfaction rather than interrogating whether the situation itself deserves our continued presence. The paradox deepens. The very traits that helped us succeed, persistence, responsibility, commitment to seeing things through, become the mechanisms that trap us in situations that no longer serve who we're becoming. The calculation happens unconsciously, continuously, like background software running without your awareness. Every hour you spend at that job, every conversation where you defend your choice to stay, every small adaptation you make to tolerate what doesn't fit, your brain is logging these as investments, not in some abstract ledger, but in neural pathways that strengthen with repetition, in narratives you tell yourself about who you are and what your life means. Economists call this the sunk cost fallacy, but the term barely captures the emotional weight of what's actually happening. When you've spent 8 years building a client base in a city you never liked, those years don't just represent time past. They represent birthdays celebrated in restaurants you chose because they were convenient, not because you loved them. Friendships that formed because of proximity rather than genuine connection. An apartment lease you renewed 6 times because moving felt like admitting you'd made the wrong choice in the first place. The investment isn't just what you put in, it's what you gave up to put it in. A man stays in graduate school for his 7th year, long past the point where his research excites him, because leaving now would mean those 6 previous years. The teaching assistantships, the conferences, the weekends in the library become a story without an ending. His parents have been telling relatives about our son, the future professor, for so long that their pride has become part of his obligation. The dissertation sitting half-finished on his laptop represents not just intellectual work, but every social event he skipped, every relationship that withered because he didn't have time right now. We don't just invest time and effort, we invest identity. The narrative you constructed about why you made certain choices, why you're the kind of person who sees things through, why this difficult path will eventually lead somewhere meaningful, that narrative becomes structural. It holds up other parts of your self-concept. Removing it feels like pulling a foundational beam from a building. When someone asks why you don't just leave, they're asking you to do more than change jobs or end a relationship. They're asking you to declare that your judgment was wrong, that the sacrifices you made were unnecessary, that the version of yourself who chose this path 5 years ago didn't know what they were doing. That's not just uncomfortable, it threatens the coherence of your entire story. Research on commitment escalation shows this pattern repeating across contexts. People pour more money into failing business ventures because they've already invested so much. Governments, for example, continue to fund the Concorde supersonic jet project for years, despite clear evidence of its economic non-viability, largely due to the immense prior investment and national prestige at stake. Admitting failure in such projects often carries significant political consequences. We stay in book clubs we don't enjoy, maintain gym memberships we never use, keep clothes that haven't fit in years. Each represents not just a practical commitment, but a small piece of the identity we were trying to build when we said yes. The attachment intensifies with visibility. A career shift isn't just an internal decision, it's something you'll need to explain at family dinners, justify to former colleagues, account for on your resume. Every conversation becomes a reminder of what you're walking away from, requiring you to either defend the decision or absorb subtle judgments about your lack of follow-through. Then there's the opportunity cost, which operates in reverse. While you've been investing in this particular path, alternative paths became unavailable. The job you turned down 6 years ago to stay in your current position, the graduate program you didn't apply to because you were giving this a real chance, the relationship you let fade because long distance seemed too complicated when you were so committed to your career trajectory. Those lost possibilities haunt the edges of your awareness, making the current investment feel even more precious, even more impossible to abandon. Your brain performs a kind of creative accounting, tallying everything you've put in while conveniently minimizing what you're continuing to lose by staying. The cost of another year doing work that drains you never appears on the balance sheet with the same psychological weight as the 7 years already spent. We treat future suffering as somehow less real than past investment, even though we'll experience that future suffering with the same intensity we're experiencing present dissatisfaction. This is why people stay in situations that external observers can clearly see are destructive. From outside, the math looks simple. Stop spending energy on something that isn't working. But from inside, you're not just calculating present circumstances against future possibilities. You're weighing your entire constructed identity, every sacrifice that identity required, every story you've told about why those sacrifices mattered. The woman in the parking lot isn't just reluctant to leave a stable job. She's reluctant to declare that the person who took that job, who convinced herself it was the responsible choice, who built a life around it, that person made a mistake. That every Sunday evening of dread was preventable. That the pension her parents admire isn't compensation for suffering, it's just money, and money alone has never been enough to make a life worth living. Recognizing this pattern doesn't immediately dissolve it, but understanding what's actually keeping you anchored, not logic, not practical constraints, but the psychological weight of accumulated investment, opens a different kind of conversation. Not, why can't you just leave, but what would it mean to treat those past years as complete in themselves, regardless of what happens next? Emotional attachments and identity. Start with something you can hold. Take an object connected to whatever you're considering walking away from. A business card, an employee badge, a photo from when the job still felt promising, even just a pen with the company logo. Set it on a table in front of you. Look at it for 2 full minutes without distraction. No phone, no background music, just you and this object that represents a piece of your identity. Notice what happens in your body during those 2 minutes. Does your chest tighten? Does your breathing change? Do you feel defensive, nostalgic, angry, numb? Write down 3 physical sensations before you write a single thought. We intellectualize constantly, but your body already knows what your mind refuses to acknowledge. Now answer this question on paper with a pen, not a keyboard. If I died tomorrow, would I regret the time I've spent here? Write for exactly 5 minutes without stopping. Don't edit. Don't cross out. Don't worry about grammar. When the timer goes off, put the pen down even if you're mid-sentence. Read what you wrote. Circle every sentence that starts with but or however or although. These are your justifications, the invisible bricks in that wall separating knowing from leaving. Each one deserves examination, not dismissal. Pick one circled justification. Let's say you wrote, I hate my job, but I need the insurance for my daughter's asthma medication. This sounds reasonable. It probably is reasonable. But now go deeper. Ask, is this the only path to that insurance? Not theoretically. Actually research two alternatives this week. Call a broker, price marketplace plans, ask your partner's employer about family coverage. You're not committing to change yet. You're just testing whether this brick is made of concrete or papier-mâché. Do this for 3 of your justifications. Schedule specific time blocks, 30 minutes each, to investigate whether the wall is as solid as it feels. A woman I knew stayed in municipal work for 6 years past her breaking point because she needed the pension. When she finally sat down with a financial advisor, she discovered that her private sector skills would command enough salary increase to fund her own retirement account and still come out ahead. The wall she'd been staring at for 6 years had a door she'd never checked. Keep a log for 2 weeks. Every time you find yourself defending your choice to stay, to a friend, to yourself, to your reflection in the bathroom mirror at work, write down what you said and who you said it to. Don't analyze it in the moment, just record it. At the end of 2 weeks, read through your defenses, look for patterns. You'll likely notice your explanations shift depending on your audience. To your parents, you emphasize stability and responsibility. To your spouse, you focus on financial security. To yourself, late at night, you admit it's partially fear of the unknown. These aren't lies, but they're fragments of a truth you've never assembled into a complete picture. Write one paragraph that integrates all these scattered defenses. What does that paragraph reveal about what you're actually protecting? Here's an exercise that sounds simple but cuts deeper than almost anything else. Describe yourself in 3 sentences without mentioning your job, your relationship status, or any role you play for other people. Not, I am a project manager, or I am a partner, or I am a parent. Just you, stripped of function. Most people stare at blank paper for 10 minutes before writing anything. When identity and role have fused completely, separating them feels like trying to unbraid a rope that's been welded into a single cable. If you manage those 3 sentences, read them to someone who knows you well but doesn't have a stake in your current situation, not your boss, not your partner, maybe not even your parents. Ask them, do these sentences match the person you see when we spend time together? Their answer matters more than you think. Finally, calculate your actual sunk costs with brutal honesty. Take a spreadsheet or a blank page, divide it into 2 columns. On the left, list everything you've invested, years, money, relationships formed, opportunities you chose because of this path. Be thorough. Then on the right, list everything you're currently losing by staying. Sleep, health, relationship strained, opportunities you're passing up, the person you're becoming versus the person you wanted to be. Your brain will fight this exercise. It wants to keep the right column abstract while making the left column visceral and concrete. Force specificity on both sides. Not, I'm losing my passion, but I haven't painted in 4 years, even though it used to be how I processed everything. Not just 8 years invested, but 8 years during which I could have been building something I actually believed in. Look at both columns. The left is already gone whether you stay or leave. The right continues accumulating every single day. That's where you start. You've done the exercises, you've held the business card, written the 5-minute response, investigated whether the walls are concrete or papier-mâché. You've circled your justifications and maybe discovered that a few of them had doors you never checked. Now comes the part nobody mentions in the motivational posts about radical life changes. Even with all that clarity, even after you've mapped your sunk costs and recognized the opportunity costs accumulating daily, the fear doesn't disappear. It just becomes visible. And visible fear is somehow worse than the ambient dread you've been carrying for years, because now you can't pretend it's not there. This new illuminated fear demands a response, challenging the comfortable complacency of unexamined anxiety. What you're facing isn't irrational. The unknown is threatening. Your nervous system evolved in environments where leaving the familiar tribe or territory could mean death, where uncertainty was legitimately dangerous. Your body doesn't distinguish between walking away from a soul-draining career and wandering away from the protection of your ancestors' campfire. Both trigger the same ancient alarm systems: threat, danger, turn back. This primal response, deeply ingrained in our biology, prioritizes immediate safety over potential long-term fulfillment, even when the perceived danger is purely metaphorical. But your alarm systems can't calculate one crucial factor. The cost of staying might be higher than the cost of leaving, just spread across years instead of concentrated into a single moment of change. The slow erosion of your spirit, the gradual dimming of possibility, the quiet accumulation of regret, these don't trip your internal alarms because they happen too slowly. Your nervous system is designed to protect you from saber-toothed tigers, not from the existential threat of living a life that doesn't belong to you. When you imagine leaving, your mind floods with specific, vivid catastrophes. You can picture exactly how you'll fail. You can see the disappointed faces, imagine the awkward conversations, feel the embarrassment of having to explain yourself. The fear paints in high definition. When you imagine staying, your mind offers vague reassurances. It'll get better. You'll adjust. Maybe next year will be different. The misery of staying arrives in soft focus, a general malaise rather than a specific disaster. This asymmetry isn't accidental. It's how psychological paralysis maintains its grip. The concrete terrors of change always feel more real than the abstract suffering of stagnation. And then there's the identity question, the one that makes everything else feel manageable by comparison. If you're not the person who does this job, pursues this relationship, lives in this place, follows this path, then who are you? The fear isn't just about losing what you have. It's about losing who you've been telling yourself you are. We construct elaborate identities around our commitments: the person who never gives up, the loyal partner, the dedicated professional, the one who sees things through. These identities feel like core truths about ourselves, but they're actually stories we've been telling so long we've forgotten they're negotiable. To give up means to revise the story, to admit that the protagonist you've been playing isn't the only character available to you. That's terrifying in a way that has nothing to do with practical concerns about money or logistics or other people's opinions. It's the terror of narrative discontinuity, of discovering that the self you thought was solid is actually fluid, that you contain possibilities you've been refusing to acknowledge because acknowledging them would mean admitting you've been refusing them. So you stay. Not because staying is better, but because staying doesn't require you to find out who you'd become if you left. The familiar suffering asks nothing new of you. The unknown demands everything. Which brings us to where we actually are, standing at the threshold between understanding why we stay trapped and learning how to move through it. You've examined the mechanisms: loss aversion, sunk cost fallacy, identity fusion, the cultural programming that glorifies persistence above wisdom. You've seen how your brain performs creative accounting, making past investments feel more real than future suffering. You've tested your justifications and found some of them hollow, but you're still here, reading, which means some part of you hasn't given up on the possibility of something different. That matters more than it might seem. The woman sitting in her car 30 minutes before her shift, the graduate student staring at his half-finished dissertation, the municipal worker who finally checked whether the pension was actually worth 6 more years of quiet desperation, they all reached a point where awareness alone wasn't enough, but awareness was still the necessary starting place. What comes next isn't about conquering fear or eliminating uncertainty. You can't logic your way out of biology, can't think your way past millions of years of evolutionary wiring that screams danger whenever you approach the unknown. What comes next is learning to act alongside the fear rather than waiting for it to subside. Understanding that courage isn't the absence of terror but movement despite it.